Hello students, today's video I am going to discuss concept of electronegativity and electron affinity. So let me explain what is called the electronegativity. Suppose here we have taken a molecule like Cl2. So we know this is chlorine and chlorine has 7 valence electrons. So another chlorine, and these 1 electrons, each chlorine is sharing 1 electrons each and they form Cl2 molecule. So if I draw the Cl2 molecule, it looks like this. So now the 2 electrons which is bonded, means which are responsible for making this covalent bond, this is 2 bonding electrons. Now chlorine molecule, you know that means chlorine atom is a very strong electron affinity, means they can pull the electron towards itself very strongly. But here when Cl2 molecule is forming, these 2 bonding electrons, they are sharing with each other and they will be in between or middle of the bond. But if we consider another molecule like hydrochloric acid, so let me draw the hydrochloric acid molecule Lewis dot structure, hydrogen 1 bond, 1 electron and chlorine 7 electrons. They share with each other and they are forming hydrochloric acid molecule. Now in HCl, these 2 electrons, mean these 2 bonding electrons should be in the middle of the bond because they are sharing with each other. But that's not the fact. Here we can see these bonding electrons, it is towards the chlorine side. It is more towards the chlorine side. That means chlorine electron density is slightly higher than the hydrogen, so chlorine is getting delta negative and hydrogen is getting delta positive. In chemistry, if the little bit very less amount of electrical charge generate, it's called delta minus, and less amount of electric charge remove, it's called delta plus. So hydrogen is slightly positive, so that's why delta plus, and chlorine is slightly more electron rich because the bonding 2 electrons are more towards the chlorine, so chlorine electron density is slightly higher than the hydrogen, so chlorine I can write it's a delta negative. Now why such things are happening? Because chlorine has a more electron affinity, means chlorine has 7 valence electrons, chlorine just need 1 more electron to fulfill the octet, so that's why chlorine has more tendency to pull the electron towards itself. So when these kind of 2 elements are bonded, they are making a covalent bond, the element which has more tendency to pull the bonding electron towards itself is called the more electronegative elements. That means if I compare electronegativity of hydrogen and chlorine, chlorine is more electronegative element than hydrogen. That's why these 2 bonding electrons are more towards the chlorine, and that's why chlorine become delta negative and hydrogen become delta positive. That's why this is called the generation of polarity. So this molecule is slightly polar molecule, it's not non-polar. Non-polar means this Cl2 molecule is non-polar because there is a overall charge separation, there is no kind of delta plus or delta negative is forming. But here in hydrochloric acid molecule, since chlorine is more electronegative than hydrogen, so that's why chlorine is slightly delta minus and hydrogen is slightly delta plus. So this kind of bond is called polar bond. Let me take one more example of water. So this is water molecule. Water, hydrogen has 1 electron, valence electron. Oxygen has 6 valence electrons. 1 2 3 4 5 6, and hydrogen here 1. So they will be sharing 1 electron each. So we also should know how to draw the Lewis dot structure. So here oxygen and hydrogen 1 covalent bond. Oxygen has 2 lone pair. Now these 2 bonding electrons, it's not just middle of the bond, it will be moved towards the oxygen side. And that's why now oxygen is become more electron dense. So we can write that oxygen become delta negative, hydrogen become delta positive. So now this each bond is polar because slightly charge separation is happening. Now why such things are happening? Because oxygen is more electronegative element than hydrogen. Now in the periodic table we have to understand, in the periodic table the group 16, group 17 elements. 16 elements means oxygen, sulfur. 17 means all the halogens like fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine. They are more electronegative in nature because they, if I think about oxygen, oxygen has only 6 valence electrons. So it needs only 2 more electrons to fulfill the octet. So that's why oxygen has more tendency to pull the electron towards itself. So that's why oxygen is more electronegative element. Similarly, all the halogen atoms, they need only 1 electron to fulfill the octet. So they have a more tendency to pull electron towards itself. So halogens are more electronegative element. So electronegativity concept we use when they form a covalent bond. When we just think about the simple element, means single element, like suppose if I think about only chlorine element, in that case we are not going to use the term electronegativity, we will be using the term electron affinity. Electron affinity is related with the energy. Means if chlorine accept 1 electron, now chlorine becomes Cl minus and fulfill the octet. So it makes the chlorine a stable electronic configuration, and that's why they release energy. So means they release energy means minus heat we can write. So electron affinity is connected with the energy. So here electron affinity of chlorine means it's a negative. Negative means you need not to supply energy, rather than element itself will release energy to get the stability because it needs just 1 more electron to fulfill the octet. Now just think about sodium. When you are taking sodium, sodium has only 1 valence electron. So sodium has more tendency to lose electron, means it form Na plus. But if I want to add 1 more electron here to make the sodium minus, that is definitely a huge energy needed, because sodium doesn't want to form Na minus, sodium want to be Na plus. So if I want to make sodium to Na plus, so you need not to it's called the ionization energy, means you are supplying energy, it will remove electrons and it will form Na plus. But electron affinity means you are adding electrons. So when you are adding electrons, but sodium doesn't want any electron, so that time you have to supply huge amount of energy. So here you have to supply huge amount of energy. So in that case, electron affinity will be positive. So this is the main difference between the electronegativity and the electron affinity.